So I usually do red versus blue videos, but red versus blue has actually been venturing into some Fast and Furious territory, so I figured why couldn't I?
So I have a theory for Fast and Furious 9.
Spoilers, by the way, just in case I end up guessing what happens or you haven't seen the trailer yet. Although, technically, since I don't have first-hand knowledge of the film, it's not exactly spoilers as much as it is a good guess. In the trailers, we see that the new villain of the movie is Dom's long-lost brother, Jakob Toretto, which has never been mentioned since the beginning of the franchise. And he's a high-performance driver, he's an assassin, essentially a spy. And I thought it was interesting that someone who was a street racer from the beginning happens to be related to a guy that's a spy. But my guess is, the reason why we've never actually heard him mentioned is, there's never actually been a scenario where you would need to bring him up. Especially if the character was in the military this whole time, if he and Dom have issues with each other. So, I thought about the franchise, and I came up with a theory before the movie comes out, because it's delayed several times, as to how that makes sense. First, we see a scene in one of the trailers of some stock cars crashing, and I think they're going to explore Dom's backstory with his father. And I think that's where Jakob and Dom's story split. After that, I think Jakob joins the military, becomes high-ranked. There's 5 years between Fast 1 and Fast 4, so that's a good amount of time where he could get high-ranked. And then I think Jacob's next major event in his life is when he meets Mr. Nobody. My theory is that that is the best way Jakob could be introduced into the universe and have it still make sense. Jakob isn't in this life because of Dom. Dom is in this life because of Jakob. Jakob Toretto could ultimately be the good guy, and the villain could ultimately be Mr. Nobody, or maybe somebody pulling Mr. Nobody's strings, like his boss. I think if Jacob's not the good guy, he's at least the reason why Dom was brought into this world of spies and stuff. And I think the reason why Jakob has issue with Dom in this is because Dom has been working for Mr. Nobody. I think Mr. Nobody and Jakob Toretto could have been after each other for a while. So basically in the Fast and Furious hierarchy, Jacob's at the top while Dom and his team are at the bottom, working their way up until Mr. Nobody notices them. In Fast 4, the villain was Braga, the leader of a drug cartel, and the reason why Letty was killed. Then in Fast 5, Dom and Brian's team were pursued by Hobbs and his team because they were framed for killing FBI agents. When Hobbs' team is killed by the people who framed Dom's team, then Hobbs teams up with Dom's team to take them down, earning their trust. In Fast 6, Hobbs is going after Owen Shaw, and he ends up getting Dom's team to help him take them down, giving them a chance to earn their freedom back. Then we learn that Braga from 4 was actually working for Owen Shaw. Shaw learns that Letty was alive and then recruited her to his team. Braga and Owen Shaw is Connection 1. And then we saw in Fast 7, the villain in that movie was Deckard Shaw, Owen Shaw's brother. He supposedly killed Han in Fast and Furious 3, which I thought was one of the best reveals in a movie we've seen in a while. Owen and Deckard are the next major connection. Hobbs is incapacitated by Deckard Shaw, Owen Shaw's brother. So basically, because Hobbs is in the hospital, we end up meeting a guy called Mr. Nobody, which, according to Mr. Nobody, Hobbs referred Dom's team to him so that they could help him take out someone called Jakonde and save Ramsey, a hacker who created a device called the God's Eye, which is basically a tracking device on steroids. They help him get Jakonde, he helps them get Deckard. And then in Fast 8, we found out that Jakonde and Owen Shaw were hired by Cypher to steal the things they were each supposed to be stealing, the Nightshade device from 6, the God's Eye from 7. Then Deckard from 7 teams up with Dom's team to take out Cypher because she corrupted his brother. With Owen Shaw and Jakonde working for Cypher and Deckard being against Cypher, that's 3 more connections. Maybe in Fast 8, Cypher wanted Dom for more than just the fact that he screwed her over in 2 of her other jobs, but because Mr. Nobody wanted him. And even though she fails in Fast 8, she does get away. And according to the trailer of Fast 9, she'll be working with Jakob. Now, it's possible Jakob was after Cypher just like he was Mr. Nobody, or as a criminal himself, he learned that Dom's actually been trained by Mr. Nobody to this point, then he decides to team up with Cypher. But once she points out that her MO is specifically to keep people like Mr. Nobody in check, like the government in check, he could join her because Dom needs to be kept in check. He's gotten away with a lot of things in the last few years in these movies, Now, him working with Mr. Nobody makes it even worse. Especially since he helped Cypher with all of her terrorist crap in the last movie. What if Mr. Nobody was in charge of the mission where they went after Owen Shaw? If Hobbs worked for Mr. Nobody in 7, he could have worked for Mr. Nobody in 6. We just never saw Mr. Nobody yet. It wouldn't be the first time that we see connections between characters that were there the whole time that we didn't see until later, like with Braga and Shaw, or Shaw and Jakande to Cypher. Even though Hobbs did somewhat trust them after Fast 5, Mr. Nobody telling him to recruit them would definitely make it more believable that he'd trust them so fast to help take down Shaw. Then with Hobbs out of commission in Fast 7, Mr. Nobody went to them himself. If it didn't work, well, it didn't work. But if it did work, that'd be one more asset that Mr. Nobody would have against Jakob Toretto, especially since it would be Jacob's own blood.
It's you I want. Because you and I can help each other get what we both need.
And if you put all those pieces together, that could be how Han survived in Fast 9. In Fast 7, after Hobbs got his ass kicked by Deckard, Mr. Nobody and his organization could find out that Deckard has access to Han's location. This is where Mr. Nobody has his men swoop in and try to save Han. Jakob could have found out about this, and then he could have swooped in and saved Han instead of Mr. Nobody. This way, Jakob would have a member of Dom's team alive on his side. Obviously, I think there's going to be more to Han's survival than someone just running up and pulling him out of the car, but I do think Jakob and Mr. Nobody, or somebody working for Mr. Nobody, will be connected to his survival. I think it makes the most sense to bring in Dom's brother, with Dom's brother having been connected to Mr. Nobody first. Dom would have no reason to suspect that Mr. Nobody had anything to do with Han's survival, or even his brother Jakob, since he showed up after Han was killed, making his proposal of going after Jakande sound like a tit-for-tat situation. Like, you help me with Jakande, I'll help you with Deckard Shaw. At that point, the only coincidence in this story would be Dom's team being able to do what they did in Fast 5, running into Hobbs, a person that worked for Mr. Nobody, and that being pretty much a lucky ticket for Mr. Nobody in the situation with Jakob. Not to mention Letty, who just happened to be connected to Dom, going undercover with Braga and ending up with Owen Shaw, who Mr. Nobody was investigating, giving Mr. Nobody first-hand access to Dom. And honestly, I don't think there's anything more to Cypher wanting revenge on Dom than the fact that he just screwed her over in 3 previous jobs. I don't think there's any deeper connection than that, really. I do think it's possible that in this movie, Han will be revealed to be working with Jakob, but it won't be because Han's a bad guy. Han and his team, Sean, Earl, they will be working with Jakob to take down Mr. Nobody. I think obviously after taking out Cypher, who would never be part of their family, given everything she's done, I think this could be setting him in a position to question whether or not Mr. Nobody or Jacob's side is the right side to be on, and also why Shaw's mother is coming in here to possibly take the place of mentor to Dom and his team. It could be setting up, ultimately, Dom's team taking down Mr. Nobody and his intelligence organization, or the more likely option that this entire franchise has been revealed to be about Dom building up to ultimately redeeming his brother. And to end this video, also, there's another thing in this recent trailer that came out. Everyone's wondering why that car flew through the window. And it's like, they're asking, is that hydraulics? Is it some really, weird drifting? Magnet plane. There's a coil thing there. There's a coil thing there. There's a coil thing there.
Crank it all the way up.
Yes! It's a freaking magnet pulling the car through the building, I think. I think this movie's going to have a theme of magnets. Kind of like Fast 6 had a theme of harpoons. So yeah, that's my theory for Fast and Furious 9. Tarzan.